Thank you for your interest in the Retained Recruiter show powered by iIntro. Before the show starts, I have a small favour to ask of you. Our goal is to provide you with the most insightful, helpful and practical recruitment knowledge and know-how from the best in the recruitment industry. If you like this channel and enjoy watching our content, hit the subscribe button to get notified as soon as we upload a new episode. Thank you again, and as ever, we're rooting for your success. Now, time for the show. Hello and welcome to the Retained Recruiter show. My name is James.
My name is Jo. Thank you very much for joining us today. And as you can see, we are no longer alone. We are joined by a fantastic guy today. Russell, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much for having me.
You're very welcome.
You're very welcome.
James, what we're going to be covering today?
Well, we're going to be covering a lot of great topics today, Joe. I'm really excited to have Russell with us. Russell's based over in Singapore. So, Russell, first of all, I want to say thank you very much for staying up so late. I hope we're not past your bedtime. The headline for today is talking about the tech trends to elevate client-focused recruitment, and we're going to sort of lead into this with some questions that you're going to start with, Joe, I think. No, Russell, it's great to have you on board. But before we get started, Russell, let's do the formal. Russell West of Roland Consulting Group. Why don't you just give us a brief introduction of who you are, where you're based, which I've already said, but give us a little introduction on yourself.
Yeah, okay, sure. So I got into recruitment or headhunting straight out of university, basically. I always laugh at this. My family was in sales, and I didn't really know what I wanted to do. I was one of those individuals where I think, like most, I just fell out of uni and was like, what am I going to do next? And I didn't know. But I knew that I had to buy a plane ticket if I did want to go somewhere, if I did want to do anything, and I was dead broke. So I come out with all this debt, as you do, and I was thinking, well, I just got to get a job. So I ended up in London, and I was still in the university mindset, kind of coming out of that. Minimum work, maximum partying kind of mode, as you do. And I found a job in London, and it was paying, and that was fine. And I thought, well, I'll do that for 3 months and I'll go and work in a mine in Australia, because I'd heard at the time that if you worked in a mine in some outback part of Australia, you could earn, at the time, it was a lot of money. It still is now, but 100 grand, 6 months. You didn't have a life, but it gave you, in my opinion, the capital to do something. And I thought, yeah, I'll do that. So I need to get a plane ticket. And I didn't have any money. I could barely afford a subway. So I got my head down and sort of started working. And I thought, yeah, it'll take me 2 months. First month comes along, spent all the money in rent, because I was living off tuppence and I had to pay for rent. So I was like, this is going to take me ages to save up for this. So it went 2 months, 3 months, 4 months. And then before I knew it, I was into the job, and I was working at HFG on sort of one track or one company headhunter until I set up my own brand, and then just started off basically at the bottom rung. Started off at Tea Boy, basically, making the coffees, and then worked up through and through organically, and then came out here in 2014. I came out here, so I've been out here for nearly 10 years now, having done 2.5, 3 in London. And then I kept working up and got to a point where I was looking after a team, and then I decided back in Feb or Jan to set up my own brand. So that's how the Roland Consulting Group came around. That's a bit about me, I guess.
Brilliant. Well, listen, that's given people a flavour of your background. Interested to hear you out of the university and straight into recruitment. And no doubt there's lots of other little stories that we probably won't come to today. We've got a fairly mild audience. Don't want to sort of break some of those rules. So why don't we get into business to back on theme, so to speak. So Joe, I'll start with the question, because I hear you've had a power cut in your house, but the batteries are back on.
So I'm hotspotting, so I have no lights in my house, and I'm hotspotting off my internet. So sorry, Russell, that was nothing to do with your explanation of your background. It was literally a massive power cut. But I'm back online now. So James, fire away with our first question.
Okay, so what's the first question we got for you? Because obviously, you've had a lot of experience over the years, but we want to talk about something that's quite often the unspoken thing. So what are the unwritten rules to becoming a more effective recruiter, in your opinion? It's a mouthful, isn't it?
That's a biggie, isn't it?
There's probably two things that stand out for me, in that regard. Three. One is, do we really have a code of ethics or a code of conduct? in recruitment. If you think about lots of industries, you've got one. You've got a way in which you're conditioned to behave, and there's a set of rules which is like, well, if you're deviating from that, it's a bit of a faux pas. When talking about what we do, in my opinion, we're essentially a broker. We're nothing more than that. You call us a recruiter, a headhunter, whatever you want to call it. We're a middle person. We're an intermediary between two entities. That's what we do. And there's lots of different, guises of that job. But we are in the people business. And that for me is the first, I guess, if I was thinking about it, the first, unwritten rule is that it doesn't get said enough, but we are there to deal with people and humans on both sides. We're not selling a fridge. It's not like this fridge can do A, B, and C, and then someone's either buying it or they're not. We're dealing with human emotions on both sides. And I think, we've lost a lot of that. I think we've lost a lot of the focus on just how important that is, that we're dealing with humans on a human level. And I think going back to sort of technology and phasing that in, I'm not really, I'll come on to it in the second point and further questions, but I'm not really sure how well we're using that in that regard. So I think, people is one. We are in a people business, we're in a people industry, and for me, it's incredibly important that we remember that, and we're treating people with courtesy and respect, and the way that we would want to be treated. And I think a lot of that has been lost, very sadly, in our industry. I think the second one is
before you go to the second point, Russell. Just before you go to the second point, sorry to go across there. I just didn't want to lose a train of thought that I had there. I think when you talk about this, it's some of those rules are unspoken. There's no code of conduct, I think, is how you describe that. And I think that's where we have to look at how the industry is not seen as a professional services. It's not professional. There's no code of conduct. So when you think about the other, what I'd like to think are comparable industries, be it management, consultancy, accountancy, legal professions, whatever, they're professions, and recruitment's not a profession. So it's a much bigger discussion that could be had. But I think until we actually recognise that, and that the service that we offer is people based, there are things that we should be aware of. It's a bigger thing than the three of us on this call today. But I do think that that there's a lot to be said for the fact that we need to strive towards better standards within the sector, and anything we can talk about that helps drive up those standards is only going to be a good thing. So I want to cut across because it was in my mind, professional services. So I hope you've remembered your second point.
No, 100%. I just think to top onto that, no one's perfect. No one's perfect, and we all have flaws, but aiming to be the best possible headhunter, recruiter, whichever word you want to use, that you can be on a daily basis, not only does wonders for your own personal reputation amongst your clients and amongst the individuals you deal with, but also raises the standard, across the board, for everyone else in the industry as well. Everyone else in the industry gets tarnished with the same brush, unfortunately. People don't single out, it's that, people generalize, right? So, it's that as a whole, that industry is like that. And actually it's not. There's many different people with many different standards, in the industry. So I think that's the first thing I would say just there to what you said, James. I think also the second thing for me is, and it's a major point I've thought about, it's one of the reasons that I set up the brand that I've set up now, because hopefully it will be a philanthropic brand down the line. It's going to give a lot away. It's about process and it's not about achievement. And I think there's something to be said there. I think the major problem that I have, I guess, with the industry in that regard, or the unwritten rules, is sales and consulting. For me, they're two entirely different things. It's very, very easy to fall under the sales bracket. Now, of course, when you've got firms banging the drum, they want to see numbers on the board, they want to see profit, they want to see top line and consequently bottom line. So when you've got firms banging the drum for that, people get pressurized. Not only that, understandably so. Absolutely, totally get it. People get pressurized. People feel the need to, perform. People feel the need to sort of gear towards achievement, et cetera, et cetera. And I think that doesn't do us any favors for consulting, because I think you then start to do far more than you can possibly take on, and you start to forget about what I come back to in that first point, which is the individuals involved. And it's not only the individuals on the client side, it's also the individuals on the candidates. I mean, I'll give you a good example, one I hear regularly, and I don't know if any of the listeners hear it or if you guys hear it, but one that always gets me is every time, for me, I make a personal note now, and I don't always get it right, but 9 times out of 10, I will make a personal note to call always call someone who has, even if they haven't got the job, just to let them know that it hasn't worked out, reasons why, etc. The amount of times you'll get someone saying, oh, look, thanks so much, really appreciate the call, never get a call, right? And that, for me, I find that sad, because I now think, how many times has that had to happen to that person or these people in general for me to hear that? And I'm sure it's not me, I'm sure it's anyone else who does that. But that's when it comes back to the idea for me that that's not that people are doing that deliberately. I think people are seeking the deal, are seeking the placement, are seeking the fee on the board. And when you do that, you lose sight, in my opinion, of all the reasons why we can help in this job. Because we can make an enormous difference to people's lives. I think about it so often. We have such an important role to play in people's lives. It's unbelievable. If you think about it, what we're influencing is what someone does for potentially 10 to 12 hours a day, 5 days a week. They work longer, 6, 7, whatever it is. That is a monumental amount of someone's life. They probably spend longer at work than they do with their wife or their husband, and we influence that. We essentially say, I've got something for you in A that I think is really relevant and can be expansion of your CV, and I think you should go for it. And on that basis, we like to. And they say yes or no, but we're promoting that if we're doing our job properly. And we are essentially saying, look, this is what we think is the right thing to do. And people are saying, okay, well, I take your word for it, and I'll go through that process. And I think if we're doing it on the basis that we're trying to serve the sales mentality, which is numbers on the board, we're doing it for all the wrong reasons. And we're also doing it and not thinking about the people that are involved, about their turn up to work. I know they make their own decisions, but they have to turn up to work every single day. So I think thinking about consulting is where, and this is often why I think iIntro is outstanding in that regard, because it really ties into that. It ties into consulting. It's the definition of consulting. You're not providing something that's in any way, salesy. You're providing something which is actually adding value, which comes back to, another thing that I would say about the unwritten rules, which is probably number 3, which is I ask myself the question every day now, as much as I can, how am I adding value in any way, shape or form to the people that I help? Because if I'm not, I'm a paper. I could hire someone off the street for minimum wage and ask them to come in and take that from the in tray and put it in the out tray. No problem. Anyone can do that. There's no skill in that whatsoever. That's just an administrative job, right? That's just taking something that's come in, i.e. CV, decorating it up in your own brand and then piling it out the door. There's no skill in that whatsoever. You don't need a headhunter or recruiter to do that. To come back to your point about professional service, James, I think, there is significant skill in our job if it's done properly. Human relationships are incredibly difficult. Just go and ask anyone who's been married for 20 years that. I haven't, but you go and ask someone who's been married for a long time, they'll tell you how difficult human relationships are. It's incredibly difficult, right? So in order to sustain relationships, I think you have to be operating on that basis of thinking about the other, thinking about how do I add value, how can I give back, what can I do to help the client in this process to make the best possible hire, how can I help the individual to make the most informed decision that they make, not that I make for them, that they make, and I don't influence that or bias that. I try and help them to make that decision for themselves.
I think you made a really good point there, actually. The everything you said, I think, is spot on. And I think we all sing from the same hymn sheet in that respect. And I think you're right. I don't think recruiters kind of go out there in order to be average or to provide an average or substandard service to their candidates or clients. You're right. They get wound up. They become sort of like the collateral of these kind of front end facing KPIs, but also just kind of bring it round to what you said before as well. Recruitment is a contact sport. It is a people-based business. Now, here's a question for you, because we want to talk about technology today. And I have an opinion that technology, if in the hands of people who don't know how to use it smartly, actually brings you further away from your clients and candidates rather than taking you closer to them.
100%, 100%, Joe. I mean, you took the words right out of my mouth. I think technology as it stands now, I mean, I've written about this many times. It is immense. It's absolutely immense. If you think about it, it's mind-boggling. You know, I don't use this ChatGPT or anything like that. I'm probably not technologically advanced for that. But that in itself is dangerous stuff, in my opinion, because I just don't think humans are ready for that. You know, it's a bit like power. I don't think most humans are ready for power either. But it's a similar thing, right? You know, you're talking about something where you can punch in a question and it gives you back X amount of data. Now, look, in the right hands, that's brilliant. Just like in the right hands, you know, Zoom and LinkedIn and all these other, you know, amazing pieces of kit really it's immense, but I don't think they're used in the right way. I think often they're used as shortcuts, and what's happening is, for me, the skill in the industry is coming down. You know, it's not going up, it's coming down. If you look at the standard across the board, you know, I heard a figure the other day, you'd have to tell me if this is right or not, and I can't corroborate this, but I heard it, something like the average permanent consultant or something in London now is doing about 110, 120, 150,000 pounds. And I that's what I heard. I think that was the number, something like that. Now,
yeah,
I would fall off my seat, because I think if you go back 10 years, if you went doing 250 at the shop that I was working at, you weren't even anywhere near it, you know? So it was like double what the figure that I heard. But I also sort of thought to myself, it's how is that technology? We should be going so much further if you think about it. What we can do now in terms of visibility, in terms of how many people you can see, all of that kind of stuff is incredible. I mean, I always use the analogy of go back 20 years and you had a set of Rolodex. If I wanted to know, if I wanted to contact Mr. Smith, I had to get my Rolodex out. You know, I didn't personally, but I know people that did. I'll come on to that in a minute. You go ABC and you go down to S, and then you get their phone number and their address, because the address would be on there. How many people consider an address these days? No one. But you've got phone number, address, first name, surname, and then you'd contact them off the back of that card, right? And it was papers everywhere and A4 files everywhere and ring binders everywhere. You know, my dad was in sales, saw the office. It was like, you know, paper factory. Now you don't need any of that. No. You just need a computer. That's all you need. Everything is at your fingertips. You've got a database. You have 10,000 records on there. You just click in, you know, SMITH, bang, up it comes 1 second. You know, you don't have to do any of that. And I think, you know, I just think, how are we using, you know, technology? I think, and to talk about skill, I think, you know, I remember I had a summer job probably when I was, you know, mid-teens. You know, I had a summer job. I used to go in for 3 hours in the evening to a double glazing shop. And I remember when I got there, it wasn't even an interview. They said, when can you start? I said, well, you know, it's a job. They said, come in on Monday. So I came in on Monday, 5 till 8. And they put the phone book in front of me. They put the phone book in front of me. They said, you can get going.
For those of you, sorry, just to stop this, Russell, for a second. For those of you who don't know what a phone book is, and I know there'll be quite a few people who are probably listening who don't know what a phone book is. I mean, it was literally like the Google of telephone numbers that was in a book that big, wasn't it? Yeah. And that's how you, you're right. That's how you reached out to potential customers in the day.
Yeah, you start with A, and this is the beauty of it. I mean, you'd start with A and you'd look at A and you go, right, okay, whatever it was, A, you know, and you go through alphabetical order, it'd all be in alphabetical and have a number next to them, and you would call them up absolutely cold. You know, there was no warmth in any way, shape or form. It was as cold as a call gets. You know, it's 5:30 in the evening. I'm 15 years of age. You know, it's you know, not getting paid anything hardly to do this, you know, £7 for the hour or something. And you're calling up the first A, basically working out how you're going to introduce yourself, working out how you're going to know if they want a set of windows or something, you know, and you called them up and it's sort of like, well, I'm watching TV, you know, people weren't necessarily rude, but, you know, you did get some, you know, short thrift from time to time. It was, you know, fairly curt. But I think what that taught me back in the day was some skill about how to approach uncomfortable situations in that regard and how to call people up cold. You know, if I give, you know, if I look, most people now, the ability to do that is very, very rare. You know, most people need a warm intro, they need an email, they need WhatsApp, they need something to get them going. You know, just to take a phone book like that and call, I think, you know, that's something that the guys probably back in the day before me, you know, you guys around your time had, right? You didn't have the technology that you have today. But I think if you did, the way that they would have used it 20, 30 years ago is very different to how we're using it now. I don't think they would have been taking shortcuts. I think they'd have been using it to aid what they were doing and to assist, rather than saying, how much can I get through with one click? You know, I can click and send to 500, whereas people back then would have been using it very much to assist what they were doing. I think to come back to your point, Joe, is how we're using it, not necessarily, because what we have is immense. It's absolutely amazing what we have.
Yeah.
I was going to say, one of the things I think we talk about there, Russell, is in terms of the impact of technology, and it's undoubtedly it's progressive, but in the wrong hands it isn't. And we meet lots of people, Joe and myself, and we talk to people, and they think, oh, I need to get this system, and I need to get that system, I need to get a CRM, I need to get a mailing system, I need to send out 100,000 email shots and whatever. And one of the things you said earlier just resonated with me, Russell. Is I was speaking to somebody this morning, and the conversation went around, well, I need to get mailing out to people, and whilst I know that's a fundamental part of marketing in this day and age, I did come back to this initial thing, and it's about speaking to people, because human to human, we need that interaction. So technology is the enabler that we need to use, and one of the things we do here at our intro is we do very much follow that consultative process to engage people in that correct way. But if you don't, if you people listening are recruiters, business is not made by sending out 1,000 emails a day. Business is made by connecting with people and contacting them and talking to them. And you can send out emails until you're blue in the face, but you're waiting to hit lucky, and you won't hit lucky often enough if you're not actually following up on those. So you need to take some of that process, and it's then about the conversations you have with people and how you use the technology that you've got around you, because it can be regressive if we're not careful. But how you use it around yourself to actually make sure that you're helping the client understand that a process. And we're talking about recruitment today, of course. A process. It's not just an engagement of tell me what you want and I'll go and pick them off the menu. Somebody with X years experience and worked in this type of company or that type of company. No, it's about understanding their needs and understanding the impact of actually identifying the right people and going through that consultative process, which is where you start out, Russell, in terms of having that consultative process that helps people understand. My job is not just to find you a person. My job is to help you find somebody who's going to enjoy working in your organization for the coming years. That gets the employer a great return on investment, and it justifies the quantity of the fee that you're going to be charging them, because it's justified because you've done an amazing job, and that's because you've connected with them and talked with them. So I think it's I think when we look at how technology has sort of impacted the recruitment industry over the last couple of decades, my general overview is really positively in the right hands. But if you're relying on it to do business development for you and just expect it's all going to come to you, then it's not going to work out that way.
It's the shortcut, like you say. It's like I think to myself, I always think this. There's two things I see regularly. It's emails coming through to me every morning. I get up and I've got emails I delete, right? Because they're just spam marketing emails. And I think, does that ever work? Like, does anyone ever reply to that? Firstly, you barely even get a hello. I mean, that's the first thing. I mean, what happened to the word hello? Like, hello, Tom. It's like people forgot that word existed, and they just went, hey, or hey, Tom, or, and you get these really corny strap lines. It's like, I just don't see how we got to that stage rather than just the standard introduction. Hello, my name is, very simple, introduce yourself. This is who I am, etc. I think also with an email, how many people are doing that? You come back to that unwritten rules piece. I think about what is everyone else doing and how am I differentiating myself from that? Because if I'm doing what everyone else is doing, my results will be like that. I personally think that, if I'm sending out an email, what differentiates me from any other of the 100 people that have sent one out that day? What differentiates me is if I've called the switchboard, I've been polite, can you put me through to Mr. Jones, please? Mr. Jones, thanks, however you want to approach it. Or if I've gone through and found out something about him and actually contacted him personally, that's a very different thing, and I think if I got the call as opposed to getting an email, how I would respond to that. And I just think that people are doing what's easy because technology allows them to do that. And people are doing what is quick and what is, it comes back to societal. A lot of it comes back to societal norms, right? I think I sort of just ticked off in my head, something there where if you look at how long people stay in jobs these days, sometimes, you can see people moving very quickly. And the reality of it is that there's a lot of people that feel they should be, and you hear it a lot from leaders and what have you, further up the pecking order than perhaps they are. And so they just move on. And that's, that's okay. That's each person's prerogative. But the staying power of individuals, in my opinion, these days is not great. And I think to a certain extent, it's a societal norm that how much can we do and how quickly can we do it? And I need it tomorrow. And it's like,
well, so sort of fast food, fast-paced
like
style.
It's not. We're not talking about something on a recruitment basis here. We're talking about like a huge, for me, which is actually a problem. We're talking about something which is a societal issue, which is you can have something and you can have it within an hour. Amazon's a great example of that. You need groceries, get online, bang, it's with you within the hour.
Yeah.
That's very, very useful. Don't get me wrong. If you've just run out of something, you're having a party, that's amazing. But it's also not teaching, I don't think, the right values of being able to be patient and wait, etc. And I think, there's a lot to be said about that, in this industry, which is if you put the time and effort into investing in those relationships, if you put the time and effort into actually doing things without necessarily needing the result in a minute's time, I personally think you tend to go a lot further.
I mean, when you think about what we do for a living as well, if you're ordering something off Amazon, you're normally pretty aware of what you need and why you need it. Whereas, with recruitment, I think for businesses, that's not their specialist area, is it? They are specialists in their business. We're specialists in our business, and our business is enabling the growth of their business through recruitment and retention. So we offer that advisory service, that consultation, that educational piece, which you can only really get through having a proper sort of client-focused relationship, candidate-focused as well. But today, I suppose we want to sort of lean more on the client side of it. So having that kind of client-focused relationship. And I mean, you're in Singapore. You've traveled all over the world. You've worked from various different places. During COVID, I think we had this enormous increase in the amount that we were having to use technology. I still think there's a lot of technology that we can use. So I have a question for you, Russell. In terms of strategic use of technology, I think that's what we're talking about now. Smart use, isn't it? Strategic use of technology. What would your advice be to any recruiter or business owner? Which technology couldn't they use strategically to become a more client-focused recruiter? So to elevate the relationship rather than just purely try and automate it.
Well, use it to assist. That's the first thing I would say. I would say use it to assist. Use it to see people that would have taken guys 20, 30 years ago, hours and hours and hours to ever discover. If I go on LinkedIn now and I type in the things that you can do on that platform, it's just, honestly, it blows my mind. You can go on and just type in, I'm looking for, I don't think we really appreciate it. I'm so grateful to have something like that. It's like what that's doing for me in terms of time and efficiency is just beyond the pale. I can type in, I need XYZ skill in, you can use a ridiculous example. You could go, in Johannesburg, or, you can go in New York, or you can go Beijing, you can go wherever you want around the world. And it will pull you up a set of people that do that in that
seconds.
Now, in seconds, it's like, that is just such a useful thing. Now, then what you do with that data, that is the key. That's the key. Now, how do you process that data? So if you then get that data, put it all into a folder, click message, and then go boom and send a spam out.
Yeah.
Well, then expect spam results, right? That's what you're going to get. You're going to get spam results whereby that, if you call people up with that data, now it's not as quick to come back to that point. I mean, about entitlement, about the idea that people want it tomorrow and they want it, yes, it's not as quick. And yes, you have to do a bit of grunt work. And yes, you've got to really put the hours in and get through it. But you'll always get the acknowledgement from the individual that they know that you can only be on the phone to them. You can't be on the phone to 500. You can only be on the phone to one at one time. And it's known. It's like it's to come back to the unwritten rules kind of topic. It's unwritten in terms of it's subconscious. They know that you're talking to them and there's an interaction going on there. And I think it's how you use the data. It's how you, it's how you process that to achieve maximum results. And I say this a lot, and I talk about the Rolling Stars Group, and I think, I interest very much, in this way. It's how does the technology we have assist consulting? So you've got consulting and you've got technology, and you want to assist the consulting piece with the technology, not the other way around, which is what is happening, in my opinion, in our industry. And I think I only see it getting progressively, going progressively worse that way. Should I say that? You know,
so what do you think is the linchpin? What's going to bring it together then? What's going to bring it together, that use of technology and the people side of it? Is there any solution that you see in terms of something that's holding
this
together?
This show is going to do it. Everyone's going to watch it and go, you're right.
I mean, look, intro if I look at intro as an example, right? I look at that as an example. It's a phenomenal tool because of what it offers. It offers the consulting piece, and it aids the consultant to deliver, as we sort of tie it together. You deliver a better standard of service, so you add more value, and the value you're adding is clear to see, you know, from behavioral assessments through to, you know, competency questions, etc. You're adding more value than what others are doing. So immediately you've got a USP. I think on top of that, it's not doing the job for you. iIntro doesn't go out there and do it for you. It doesn't say, I'll offer you a shortcut. It says, I'll offer you something that can aid you with your client tomorrow. But I'm not giving you a shortcut. And that's how it should be, in my opinion, because what we're being hired to do is provide our skill, hopefully our skill, in consulting to the client. Otherwise, the client can just hire someone. You know, this is where internal HR have come in my opinion. You know, it's like you just get someone in to do the job because it's cheaper to pay that person than it is to, you know, keep doing agency fees, and it can be done. But if the skill of the headhunter and if what the headhunter is offering is measurably beyond what they're doing internally, then that's where you have your value add. And I think something like iIntro really does offer that. It offers an incredible amount of added value to the headhunter or to the recruiter in order to further their offering or further their proposition to the client.
Well, Russell, listen, I think one of the things Joe and I, we're always conscious of people's time, not just yours, but the people who are watching and listening. So we do appreciate that. What we're trying to do today, I know it's flown by, and I think what we're trying to do is help people understand how tech trends can elevate client-focused recruitment. And we've spoken about some of the challenges as well as some of the solutions that we can provide there. And I think you've provides with a fascinating insight, Russell, in terms of how you've actually sort of built your business role and consulting group. We wish you continued success out there in Singapore and the greater market that you're in. So thank you very much for your time today. Joe, anything from you to add before we wrap?
Yeah, no, I love that. I think the overall theme that I get from that is kind of elevate, don't automate. And use technology to enhance, not dilute the service level offering. And I think that's very sage advice in a world where everyone's trying to plug everything into everything, aren't they? So yes, I think everyone can take, and we've had some great comments as well from people who've watched. And if you
thank you so much for having me on as well, by the way, guys. Thank you. Really appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Privilege to be on here.
Yeah. No, listen. It's our pleasure indeed, Russell. So thank you very much for your time today. So it's time for us to go. Thank you very much for listening and watching. We're looking forward to seeing you all again on the next Retained Recruiter show. So from myself, it's goodbye from me.
And it's goodbye from me, and it's goodbye from Russell. Enjoy your trip to London when you finally get over here, Russell. Thanks for joining us today.
Thanks, Kim.
Thanks all.
Cheers.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Take care, everyone. Have a good week.
Yo.